This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello everybody and welcome to the first Christmas edition of Analysing Anfield. Christmas period getting busy. I'm joined as ever by David Hughes. How are you getting on?
Very good, thanks mate. I wasn't sure what the Christmas edition intro was for there, but I just realised that we're in that kind of manic festive period, aren't we? Where we're going to be previewing about 10 games an episode.
Yeah, well, we know it's the Christmas period because every time we podcast, we seem to have missed about 6 games. So this is similar. We've got Fulham to talk about, Spurs to talk about, Palace to talk about, and the Champions League draw happened this morning. We're recording on the Monday. So we've got a fair bit to get through, and we've got one more, I suppose you could call it, Christmas podcast between Boxing Day and the New Year, which I'll be recording despite being off. So you're welcome. But
one for the boxers there.
Yeah. But we'll get straight down to Fulham anyway. It wasn't great. It was a bad game. The way we previewed it, I think it was just a case of, specifically in the first half, Fulham couldn't have played any better than he played, and Liverpool just did not turn up. There's no other way of putting it, really. It weren't at the races at all. And when you couple those two together, it just resulted in a bad half hour or so period. They deserved a goal, even if there was a bit of a push on Salah. And as a result of going a goal behind, and Fulham improving of late without the ball, I think the match just descended into something different. But it just wasn't what I expected. I don't know what you, Dave.
Definitely wasn't something I expected. Saying that, I think every prediction I made going into this weekend just didn't seem to go to plan at all, and this was definitely one of them. I expected Liverpool to have definitely too much for Fulham, even though they were an improving side. But yeah, as you said, that kind of first half an hour, 40 minutes, they played really well. Up until the 40th minute, Fulham had outshot Liverpool 6-1, which is quite telling. And yeah, Liverpool just a little bit disjointed. I think it's probably a mixture of things, isn't it? It's games coming thick and fast, fatigue, maybe even not just physical fatigue, but mental fatigue as well. Fulham having a little bit of boost with the crowd being there, and yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise, to say the least, how it panned out.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to put any kind of number on what the fans are doing to the players, but I do feel like they made a bit of a difference. I think there was just misplaced passes from Liverpool players. The second balls, what Liverpool are usually very good at, sweeping up, we just didn't. Fulham players were first to them. The first touch of our players, maybe receiving with a back to their opponents, was just bad first touches, putting yourself in a worse place and stuff. It was just one of them, really. We played countless long balls over the top of Fulham's defence. If they don't hit a man, maybe you'll sweep up the second ball and get a bit of territory as a result of that. We didn't even do that. So it was just a really bad start. And you couple that with Fulham's forward players in particular, who I don't think they're particularly great, but they do have tricky qualities. I think they're all decent at kind of coping without teammates, acting as outlet types who can carry the ball up the field. Just quick and tricky wingers, really. And he played Loftus-Cheek through the centre, which he did against City. He's a decent technical player. Zambo Anguissa in the centre, who's sicky. Mario Lemina, quite press resistant as well. So I think it was one of them where, Liverpool, for whatever reason, couldn't really get near him for half an hour until they inevitably got a bit tired. And then Liverpool and he stopped attacking, really, and then Liverpool just kind of started playing their own game. But when you're playing your own game, you're trying to break down a team who want the match to end. You need players all over the pitch who can play the last pass, really, and without Thiago and without Jota to come on, obviously Liverpool made a change towards the end of the game. Rather than bringing Shaqiri on, rather than bringing Jota on, bringing on Origi. So I just think, the more injuries that Liverpool suffer from, probably less equipped we become to solve these problems once we're presented with a deep block.
Yeah, I agree. It's Liverpool's capacity of how good they are does inevitably take a hit when you don't have that same squad depth as a result of injuries. And even it wasn't the game plan got a little bit disrupted by having to make a change with Matip as well, didn't it? That's not ideal. And that's the problem that kind of Liverpool are in now, that they're relying on the likes of Matip, who is a good player but just cannot stay fit. And the consequence is not only are you without him going into games, but it's also disrupting the flow of games as well. And if you've got tactical substitutions you want to make depending on how the game's playing out, things like that disrupt it. So yeah, he was obviously a blow. And then I feel like Henderson, you're talking about players who can kind of make penetrating passes from all around the pitch. I think that's something Henderson has massively improved on over the past 18 months or so. Obviously, I'm not saying he's Thiago levels by any stretch, but I do think he can do that. And I think when he's having to fill in a different position on the pitch, it does in some ways just limit his ability to impact the game in the same way with his passing.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers on the day, Liverpool posted bang on 2 and Fulham, 2 expected goals, that is. 2, and Fulham posted an XG of 1.7. But obviously Liverpool's is 2 with a penalty included. So if you remove the penalty, a penalty is usually 0.76. That means Liverpool essentially lost the XG to Fulham. And we took 11 shots to Fulham's 10, but obviously Fulham's were generally in better areas. I mean, Henderson did have a chance, which, in my opinion, he probably should have scored. But other than that, Liverpool don't feel like we created a great deal that we could have. I don't think we deserved any more than a point. Put it that way.
Yeah,
I think I saw a few tweets actually. Go on.
I was just going to say those numbers are very much a game in the balance that you then at the mercy of things going in your favour, aren't you? Like converting that one big chance, or kind of relying on decisions going your way. The kind of stuff that Liverpool don't normally leave to chance.
Yeah, I saw a few tweets from different Liverpool fans. One of them was actually Christian, who for long time listeners of the show will be aware of him. He actually said that it was basically the Villa game, but with Alisson in goal as opposed to Adrian. I thought that was quite a good way of putting it. Obviously, Fulham were all over Liverpool at the start, getting shots away in dangerous areas, and Alisson made a number of huge saves. Just ones that he didn't even really seem to struggle with keeping out. But I think at Villa Park, it was quite similar. Difference being, Adrian was stopping those shots, or trying to stop those shots, and a few of those shots were getting deflections and stuff like that. But I think the first half was quite similar in terms of how it started. Liverpool just didn't turn up, which is different to what we used to when it comes to this Liverpool team. It's very out of character. I think Klopp, the camera pans to Klopp at one point in the first half, and he was just screaming at his players, saying, "Wake up!" Because it's hard to put a reason on why this sort of thing happens, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it is. I just want to quickly acknowledge your point about Alisson. I think on days like what Liverpool had at Craven Cottage, which do happen, we'll probably talk about why they seem to be happening more at the moment. But they do happen, and on those days, the likes of Alisson can really be the difference between coming away with a point from a bad performance or coming away with nothing really. I do think if you had to settle with Adrian in goal, that would have been a defeat rather than a draw, which is really important to note, because, as I said, it's not always about the goalkeepers making sure you win games. Sometimes when you're not at it, it is about at least getting a point from the fixture. But yeah, I don't know what's happened, to be honest, Josh, because I briefly touched on it before the show last week. But in terms of Liverpool's away form, I don't think, if you look at it from a performance perspective, it isn't this bad. But results wise, it just isn't really happening. Really, that 7-2 Villa game, you've got that, and then you've had 4 consecutive away draws. Last 3-1-1, and it's as you're used to Liverpool kind of going home and away and winning games, no matter who they're playing, and it just seems quite bizarre. As I said, if you look at the performance indicators, it's not that black and white, but we're just looking at results for a brief second. It's quite unique, shall we say, for this Liverpool side.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit frustrating considering literally a week earlier we beat Wolves 4-0 in what was quite a commanding performance. And a week later, you can draw 1-1 with one of the worst teams in the league, really. And although we did say, they have improved of late, but I suppose one thing you could look at with this sort of thing, I think it was the first weekend in quite a while, which has seen none of the so-called Big Six actually win a game. None of the Big Six won a match. I think maybe you could put that down to the schedules and stuff like that, and other team, Fulham obviously had, I think it was something like a week to prepare for this game. Meanwhile, Liverpool away in Denmark with the likes of Salah playing 98 minutes, which I think you can question, but we're not going to go there. I think one player who I will say did well at Craven Cottage was Curtis Jones. I thought he was superb again, and I think there was a point where the person I was watching the game with, I actually compared him a little bit to Gerrard in the way that he's so dynamic on the ball, and he kind of had the vibe about him of I'll do it myself kind of thing. Even that kind of approach that Gerrard just seems to have in a lot of moments. I'll do it on my own. Jones had a bit of that about him as Liverpool were kind of trying to get an equaliser or trying to get a winner. He was really proactive on the ball, dynamic, not shying away from decisions, not shying away from taking risks and stuff like that, despite the tricky match scenario. So I think if there's one thing Liverpool's injuries as a result of didn't happen, it's Jones being integrated quicker than he probably would have. He's probably played double the minutes than what the plan was initially before anyone got injured. But I think despite that, he's not looking out of place whatsoever.
No, I'd even go as far as to say, for me, he's one of Liverpool's best players right now in the whole squad. You forget his age, like he's still so young, but the stuff that he brings to the table is just so important. We have touched on it already, but you're talking about things like versatility. He's versatile. He's creative. He's reliable. It was 7 shot creating actions on the day against Fulham, and only Robertson made more touches inside the final third, which is quite telling about his performance. And I do like the character that you kind of allude to there as well. He does seem to have this ambition to win games, but not only kind of win as a team, like he will step up and be the person to almost lead the way, which is just so unique, really, in a young player who hasn't been playing at that level for long. I think of other teams in the league and other players coming in, and it's all about trying to do the bare minimum and almost appease the players around them. Maybe taking the safer options compared to what they would at under 23 level. I've seen that a lot with youth players, but Jones doesn't seem to do that. He just seems to be able to scale up his performances at youth level for the first team, and that's why. And I know there's a lot of injuries at the moment, but that's why I think he's playing so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going a bit too early on this when I say this now, but I think already it's quite clear that he's, for me, showing signs of potentially a future captain of the club. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if around the time, say for example, when Klopp leaves, so that'd be 4 years' time, I wouldn't be too surprised if by that stage Liverpool have kind of reached a Carragher-Gerrard type dynamic with Jones and Trent as the captain and vice almost. If they continue to integrate themselves as they are, obviously you can't see Trent coming out the team anytime soon. And I think Jones is only going to grow in prominence if he keeps playing like this. How old is Jones at the minute, actually?
He's either 19 or 20. I was just thinking there as you were talking, and you, 19, which is ridiculous. But you know the way you caveat that saying I'm going in a little bit too soon. I'm going to dwarf that now, and it's probably going to get a few eye rolls. But just if you just hear me out, especially with that local connection, are you looking at maybe like a reincarnation of the Carragher and Gerrard type scenario where you've got two local lads, midfielder, defender, understand the club coming through at the same time? Because you forget Alexander-Arnold, he's still only what? He's about 22 now.
22, yeah.
I think there's only a couple of years between them. So are you seeing a reincarnation of that kind of dual scout spirit almost in the team? It's going to be one to watch over the next few years.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's one of the reasons I said it is because of the local thing. I think maybe if Jones was performing like this, but he was from a foreign background, maybe I'd probably be less inclined to think future. Well, only slightly, but probably less inclined to think future captain. But I think, as you said, with him being at the club for years and years and years now, it's kind of a bit of an old school saying, isn't it? But he doesn't know the club, he knows the area, knows the culture, the people. I do think it plays into it, especially when it comes to club captaincy. So it's one further down the line, maybe, because by the time Klopp leaves 4 years, I think Milner will be about 59, and Jordan Henderson will be 34. So he'll probably still be around, I think, at 34, Henderson. But how much game time he's getting out, I'm not comfortable putting a number on that. But it's one to look at anyway for the future. Maybe this will be an episode that we can revert back to in 4 years' time. But anyway, the Champions League, Dave. Positive spin away from the Fulham game. Liverpool obviously drew RB Leipzig in the round of 16. Thoughts? I haven't actually heard about this, have I?
No, we haven't spoken about this yet. It's. I've got mixed feelings this one. So it goes without saying, I don't think it's an easy draw compared to some of the opponents Liverpool could have faced. Obviously, Leipzig come through a really tough Champions League group. They've got one of the coaches. Well, I'd say a coach who's on the path to become one of the best in the world. If he's not already in that conversation anyway, might be a year or two too soon. But yeah, loads of quality players. I won't steal all the limelight, but we know, based on expected metrics, they look like the best team in Germany. But that being said, I think when they've got a lot of similarities, haven't they, to Salzburg? Salzburg, for the obvious reasons, Salzburg are like the light version, I'd say, of Leipzig, with some minor tactical differences. But Liverpool won both those games last season, and for that reason, I'd probably be tipping Liverpool to go through over the two legs.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I've wrote a few times on the Liverpool Red Bull link type thing, because I think not only when it comes to recruitment, but also when it comes to general style of play, there's similarities there. And I think even though the counter attack and high pressing, intense, transition based football, Liverpool have slightly moved away from in the past maybe 2 years. I think it's funny that Leipzig have as well. Though I think Salzburg is still very much in that mould, but I think Liverpool and Leipzig have both maybe in recent times developed a bit of a respect for the perks of possession almost. I think Ralf Rangnick, who was obviously behind the Red Bull identity, as previously said, like he's not really in favour of square passes and back passes and things like that. I think Liverpool and Leipzig have started doing a bit more of that. So I do think it's interesting. It's an interesting little matchup. It's kind of big brother versus little brother, a little bit sort of thing. Kane versus the Undertaker. It's that sort of vibe. It's very, but I kind of thinking Liverpool are the more evolved version almost. Liverpool are kind of, at the top of the food chain, and any top player that Leipzig kind of establish, Liverpool are highly likely to poach probably. If you're only going to look at Naby Keita, Sadio Mane, I think Upamecano's getting poached by the likes of Man United, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, and teams like that. But I do think stylistically, it is very much a clash of almost the same philosophy in a way.
Yeah, I agree. It's just something that we talked about before is when these teams try and play a similar style, and it becomes a bit of a kind of battle of attacks or a bit of a basketball game, end-to-end stuff. Liverpool just always seem to come out on top and always seem to be able to manage it well. They even find ways to nullify the threat of the opponent trying to do that, or they'll just go toe-to-toe with them and normally come out on top because they've got players who are, even though I really like a lot of Leipzig players, they've got better players who are in the prime. One thing you say about Leipzig is although it's not the case across the board, they have a lot of kind of players who are still ahead, or their best days are still yet to come in terms of in the prime years, whereas Liverpool players are very much in the midst of their prime. So it does just feel like this is why, as I said, I appreciate it's a tough game. So I'm definitely not writing up Leipzig. I think it could be difficult for Liverpool, and Leipzig look good in the numbers in the Bundesliga this year. But I do just think it's a game that Liverpool can win. A tie that they can win, based on the stuff we've just been talking about.
Yeah, it's not a good draw. It's not a bad draw, and it's strange because it's one of them that I do think, in a way, Liverpool can win in the first leg, almost if they turn up and if things go as planned. But at the same time, I'm not as comfortable as if we were maybe to draw a Porto again.
That's who I had in my head. When I looked at it, I thought the ideal draw would be Porto here because they beat them a few times. It tends to be quite comfortable. Whereas Leipzig, it's not as straightforward. But it's still one that I think there's enough evidence to say that they can come through. Put this way, it's not like Atletico Madrid last year, is it?
No, well, that was the main team. Atletico Madrid came out just before Liverpool did, and that they were the opponents I wanted Liverpool to avoid. Didn't want to face them. So good luck to Chelsea on that one. I'm glad Liverpool didn't get them. I would have preferred Barcelona. Anyone over Atletico. I remember saying last year they were a nightmare opponent for Liverpool, and they ended up proving to be that. But you mentioned the numbers a little bit on Leipzig's season. They're currently third in the table with 24 points, level with Bayern, a point behind Leverkusen at the top of the table. In attack, so their expected goals per match is the fourth best. That's excluding penalties. Their expected goals against is the third best. And when it comes to shooting, they shoot the third most frequent, and they face the third fewest shots. So, they're in and around, obviously, the third best team in the top three in Germany, really. And I think they've got certainly a top three coach, probably a top three squad. I think that's kind of what Liverpool are facing. I think in terms of Nagelsmann, I think he is very modern, isn't he? He's very similar to Klopp in a lot of ways, similar to Guardiola in a lot of ways. But I think in comparison to Klopp, he's probably a lot more experimental. I think a lot more inclined to just come up with a spontaneous, isolated plan for a specific opponent. I think Klopp's a bit more. We focus on us if you know what I'm saying. I think when it comes to coming up with an isolated tactic for a specific match, I wouldn't be surprised if he come up with something specific for Liverpool.
Yeah, if he was a player, I don't know if he can use this term with a manager, but he's got a lot of creative freedom, shall we say, in terms of how he approaches things. I think a part of that comes with still being quite young, and there will also be not that much pressure on. I think there'll be a lot more pressure on Liverpool to come to win the tie overall won't than Leipzig, that they can maybe just approach it a little bit differently. Just really quickly before we continue with Nagelsmann, though, I did notice that both on Understat and Wisecout expected points models, they are top on both this season. Which I don't know what were you using FB refs numbers then?
Yeah.
So we do value their numbers a bit more, but it is interesting that with these other two providers, they're the top based on expected metrics, which is a little bit of a testament. But yeah, I agree. Just going back to the original point about Nagelsmann, that he could well have something up his sleeve against Liverpool, and he's the type of manager that could make your life very difficult. But I think Klopp will be aware of that. Klopp will know all about him, especially because he's obviously a manager from within the Bundesliga and what he's been doing there. Klopp will be keeping a close eye on that league as much as he does with the Premier League, and he'll know him inside out. So he'll probably be expecting it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the opponent that we'll be facing, you seem to have a load of tricky, creative, quick type players, very much in the Red Bull mold, I'd say probably. Christopher Nkunku, Justin Kluivert, Danny Olmo, who you've mentioned on this podcast before, I think.
Yeah.
Upamecano is obviously a quality player. Angelino, who was a player I've mentioned on this podcast in the past.
Scored a big goal.
Yeah, he did. Well, I think one of the reasons which I can probably back up the Nagelsmann thing is anyone who watched the Manchester United game where Manchester United got beat by Leipzig 3-2, just the way in which they very clearly targeted the space behind Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka using Angelino. It was just very clearly a premeditated plan that they had worked on during the game. So it'll be interesting to see what he does for Liverpool. I think if Liverpool had a fully fit squad, it'd probably be a similar approach with the space behind Gomez and Trent being targeted. So, with Liverpool having fewer options available this time, it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I'm expecting an interesting tie, an entertaining tie, two teams wanting to play football. It'd be interesting to see if Leipzig try to play out and all that sort of stuff, knowing what the strengths of Liverpool are, the strengths of Klopp. But yeah, I think I'd probably lean towards Liverpool. I don't think it's going to be. I think certainly over two legs, second leg being at Anfield. Consider how they were kind of hanging on against United in the latter stages. I think in the final 10 minutes, I think Peter Galassi used the goalkeeper. Funny enough, used to be at Liverpool. I think he prevented 2 own goals from happening inside the last 5 minutes. So I think over two legs, knockout match against Liverpool at Anfield. By that point, there should be maybe a few more fans in the ground. I think Liverpool will get through, won't they, Dave?
I think so, yeah. The thing is, as well, we're trying to preview this game in December, and the teams won't meet, will they, until March? And you're thinking, you don't know what the defence is going to look like then. We can assume probably Van Dijk and Gomez won't be there, but you never know. The recovery could be a lot quicker than we expect for both. But you might be looking at a much healthier Liverpool side for these matches, and I think that will be key. If you have like Jota and stuff back in the team, and you just have Thiago as well. Thiago will be a big one. So yeah, you've got really a Liverpool team who kind of back to as good as they can be fitness wise, and as you said, you got the Anfield factor, more fans in there, which we can probably assume will be the case by then. I just think it plays in the favour. Second leg at Anfield and all that. So, I wouldn't be confident. I think the key thing with Atletico Madrid last year was you knew if they scored, they had the potential to see games out, not really get impacted too much by the atmosphere. Even though Liverpool played really well in that second leg, not get impacted too much and kind of hold on. Whereas you've just pointed out, Leipzig looked really shaky in those final 15 minutes, and they were at home in a game that they were commanding. So if you imagine Liverpool were trailing and needed a goal in the last 20 minutes at Anfield, you'd fancy them to get it, and maybe Leipzig to buckle. So I think there's just too many things going in Liverpool's favour, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can expect goals, but I do think it's reasonable to suggest that I think Liverpool are probably just the more evolved form of Leipzig at the minute. But we'll move on anyway to a game that takes place in 2 days' time. So hopefully listeners will be tuning in before this match gets played. But it's Tottenham, and I'll be honest, Dave, I'm not looking forward to this. I am worried.
Yeah, I would be too. I think it's a difficult one to call this because Tottenham look a good side. They look a legit side. With Mourinho, they look like a team that know how not to lose, if that makes sense. Like they know to set up to nullify the threat of teams, and also then they've got these such good players to hit on the counter. With Son, Kane, the way Kane's playing, got really good options from the bench as well. I think their options from the bench are better than Liverpool's at the moment. So if it is a quite tight affair, they could potentially call on players to make that difference. Whereas, as we've already said, the front three, if it isn't quite clicking for them, or they're just not getting the chances, and they maybe need someone else to come in and freshen up a little bit. Jota would have been that person, and he's out. So there's a lot not to like about this game from a Liverpool perspective. I mean, don't get me wrong, Tottenham will be nervous as well. They won't want to be coming to Anfield, and I'm sure they'll be expecting the worst. But it's just when you're so used to Liverpool kind of being big hot favourites to win these games, it's this one feels a little bit different.
Yeah, I don't like the tactical makeup of what it looks like. Given the injuries Liverpool have got, the lack of injuries Spurs have got, the squad that Spurs have got, and the way that they're playing this season. Not as in the way that they're playing well, the way that they're playing as in how they've approached big games tactically. I don't think they've lost one yet. Beat Arsenal, beat City, drew with Chelsea, beat United 6-1. Obviously there was a man sent off there, but I just think obviously they're playing 4-2-3-1 at the minute. Ish. It's kind of like a N'Dombele type thing. But it's standard back four, and then ahead of the back four you've got Sissoko and Højbjerg. Then ahead of them two, N'Dombele in a number 10 type position. And then you've got Steven Bergwijn and Son on the flanks with Harry Kane in the middle. But without the ball, Højbjerg and Sissoko are both dropping back into the channels to form the famous Mourinho back six, which is difficult to break down. And you've still got then Son and Bergwijn on the break, both very, very quick. Son in particular can finish one-off chances after carrying the ball 50 yards, and they're being fed by the likes of Kane and N'Dombele, both of whom are quite press resistant. If you're going to go and win the ball off them with one challenge, you're probably giving away a foul, or in the case of N'Dombele, you're probably bouncing off him. It just, and I think it's going to be Liverpool with all of the ball and Spurs waiting for those counters. But Liverpool are going to have to commit players forward to break down the Spurs block, and then Spurs are going to be countering through the likes of Son, N'Dombele, Kane, Bergwijn, without the likes of Van Dijk managing those situations. So hopefully I've just epitomised there why I don't like the makeup of this match. It just doesn't feel like a happy makeup at the minute.
What's going to be the centre-back pairing, do you think, from the Liverpool perspective? Fabinho
Well, the word is that Matip was precautionary, and the hope is that he'll be fit for Wednesday. I think it was a back spasm that he came off with. So hopefully it'll be Matip. If it's not Matip, I'm not sure it will be. It might have to be Nat Phillips. Or if Klopp wants to play seasoned players, maybe it'll be Henderson again with a different player in the midfield.
Yeah, it's that's a problem. That I think there's definitely match winners at the other end of the pitch. Even I know it hasn't been the best run of matches for say Mane, for example. Each of the forwards for the first time in a long time this season have just had little spells where they haven't quite looked at the best, which is really rare, I think, for what we've come to expect from them over the last few years. But they'll still kind of produce moments where they can win games. And I think of that Salah goal against Everton where he just, it was clear that it comes to him, he just hits this insane volley into the bottom corner. I think he could kind of produce things like that again. It's just, I don't like, from Liverpool's perspective, things at the other end of the pitch. Not that the defence has looked horrendous at all over these past few weeks, but they're truly going to be tested in this game because they're going to probably find themselves a little bit more isolated at times because of the need for Liverpool to commit to break through Spurs. And when they are isolated against the top side, who are very good at what they do, I think it is going to be tough. Like Kane, for example, I think Kane, from a defensive point of view, is really difficult to kind of plan for because you're basically trying to stop almost what a number 10 attacking midfielder at times, but then he's also got this clinical number 9 kind of ability as well that he can get on the end of chances as well as creating them, and that's really hard, I think, to kind of create a plan for.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a fair bit of Spurs this season, and he has bossed virtually every centre back he's faced. I think, specifically in the big games. In the big games when Spurs have played this kind of counter-attacking game, and it's been on the likes of Ruben Diaz and maybe Harry Maguire and players like this to prevent him from having an impact on the game. It hasn't happened, and Kane has just bossed the game. He's either been able to counter-attack by feeding the likes of Son, or if he's been stopped from countering, he's won a foul and he's relieved pressure from Spurs defence. And I think if we had Liverpool's first 11, I'd be less worried. But I think I would fully expect Kane to dominate Liverpool's centre backs the way he plays. I think he'll just do a job on them without Van Dijk, without Gomez, possibly even without Matip. It's a tricky one, and he's kind of playing in a false 9 type position whereby he completely retreats into midfield. And the false 9 usually prevents an opposing defence with 2 questions, really. Do I go with Kane and leave me position for Son to run into? Or do I stay where I am, but then Kane receives the ball and turns and all that sort of stuff? I think Kane's been that good this season. You have to go with him. I think he has to be. When the ball falls loose and Spurs can break, transition opens up and stuff, I think you have to be on Kane. You have to be standing on his toes because every kind of break comes through him. And I've got a bit less faith than usual because of the injuries Liverpool have got mainly. That Liverpool are going to be able to manage that false 9 Kane Son dynamic. That has clearly caused problems for Arsenal, City. I think Chelsea were the only team to actually manage it, but even then, I think Spurs still managed to get 1 or 2 breaks whereby they could have scored.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you go, the reason it's such a defensive headache is obviously if you drop in with them, you're vacating a space, and you've got so much pace coming in from the flanks, haven't you, with Son and Bergwijn, that it is like a multifaceted kind of attacking situation, and it is, do you go with him or do you let him have the ball and maintain your defensive shape? But he seems to be able to punish it either way. If it was just Kane and he didn't have that support network around him, I think it'd be easier. But as I said, if you focus just on Kane, I think you'll get punished through Son and Bergwijn. So it is really hard. It's tough. I think
Ndombele as well. Ndombele's
Ndombele, yeah. And Ndombele's finally kind of proven why he had such a reputation before he come, because a lot of people were almost writing him off when he first arrived because it just didn't work out. But if you just look at the kind of, he's technically fantastic. He seems to be a very clever player in terms of how he reads the game. I think he's got a really low centre of gravity. Similar to how Mane does it, where, Mane is kind of quite low to the ground and he can help some manoeuvre really quickly and he's strong. I think Ndombele is very similar to that, and he's a problem as well because he looks confident now, where he's kind of producing his best stuff rather than trying to prove his worth to get into the side.
Yeah, I think the concern with him in particular is when Liverpool are trying to attack, build these waves and waves of attack, when a ball falls to an opposing player, he just kind of gets pressed to the extent that he loses the ball and Liverpool starts another attack. He is incredibly press resistant to the extent that if, Henderson and Wijnaldum close him down, he could easily do a job on a pair of them, come out the opposite side, and then he's got Kane, Son, Bergwijn breaking ahead of him. He's kind of like a more attack-minded version of Moussa Dembele in terms of just you can't get the ball off him. Really good in tight spaces, really strong, unpredictable with his passes, and he's doing a lot of I don't know. He's similar to RB Leipzig, I think, in a lot of ways, but I think he's a bit more. He's a bit stronger, a bit more mobile. I'm reluctant to go much further on that one because I don't want to say he's doing what we expected Keita to do for Liverpool, because I think Keita has done it. I think Keita's problems have been injury related, but I think he's having a bigger impact, I think, on matches than Keita has. I think maybe tricky one, that one.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think Keita has shown glimpses. It's just really difficult for Keita because he can't get a run in the team, for fitness reasons, really. This is what I meant when I said about Ndombele being at his best in terms of having that confidence as well, because he's no longer really trying to prove his worth to get into the side. He's almost settled in the team now, and I think that allows you to have that confidence to, perform at your best. And that's why I think you're going to find it from a Liverpool perspective the worst version of him. Yeah. It's not a nice one, Josh.
No, it's not. Them four players, Son, Kane, Ndombele and Bergwijn, they are a problem. I'm concerned about dealing with that quartet. The way Liverpool's defence is at the minute, it's not even that bad when you think about it. We've got Robertson still, we've got Trent still, we've got Alisson still. It's the centre backs, and the fact that Fabinho has to play as a centre back, meaning that it's also the number 6 position a little bit. It's just that area. I've just got less faith that Liverpool are capable of managing this quartet for 90 minutes. It's going to be really hard. And if they get a lead, if they take the lead, it's going to result in Liverpool having to commit more bodies forward, which makes us even more open to the, getting done at the opposite end again. In terms of numbers, Spurs are currently 8th for non-penalty expected goals per 90, which is not the best, really, I suppose. But again, we Spurs stop attacking when they get a lead, really. The 3rd for expected goals against per 90, 10th for shots, and 9th against. But the 9th against, the shots that they do tend to be really low quality because teams can't really break through against Spurs. I've found so far this season. But yeah, I don't want to be too negative. Maybe I'm being a bit. I'm not looking on the positive side enough. But this is a game I just don't like the thought of.
I was thinking that I'll be avoiding the comment section, I think, around this point, because everyone will be slagging us off for being too negative. But the thing is, it's just we know what Liverpool are really good at, and we talk about it every week. And I just think if there is a little bit of uneasiness about an opposition, then it's worth us flagging it, isn't it? But obviously, from a Liverpool perspective, I think what is good, Josh, is the Anfield factor. I think it was big in the Wolves game, and I was just having a quick gander while we were chatting there. Tottenham haven't won at Anfield since 2011, and they predominantly lost those matches since. And I do think it's becoming a bit of a Mount Everest for Tottenham Anfield. I don't think they like coming here. I think it's tough, and with the fans being back in there as well, I think that's probably going to play a part. So I do think that will give Liverpool the edge a little bit and make Tottenham a little bit less comfortable, should we say. So maybe, I mean, it was something that we said earlier, didn't we, about we said before the pod started recording about the impact we thought Palace fans had on Tottenham on the weekend, and certainly levelled the playing field a little bit. It might be the same at Anfield and give them an already good Liverpool side a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying that, if Liverpool are on it, very few teams can live with that. But maybe I'm just on a little bit more of a inward shell type thing because of the Fulham performance. Maybe that's impacted my thought process. But
I suppose, you know what, that's a really good point. Sorry, if would have Wolves gained 4-0, Michelin, and then which was nothing game, and then if you win 3-0 Craven Cottage, you'd be looking at it thinking, yeah, these are good, but
put it this way, I think it's going to be very, very similar to that Fulham game, but against a better defensive unit and getting countered by far better players than we got countered by against Fulham. Fulham got through fairly easily on a number of occasions in the first half an hour. Spurs will score at least one if they get anywhere near those opportunities that Fulham got. I think the first goal in this game is going to be crucial. The first goal is going to be big. It's a tricky one to look at, because I think I went into the City game with Spurs thinking I know exactly what Spurs are going to want to do here, and they just went and did it perfectly and won 2-0. The Arsenal game, I knew exactly what Spurs were going to want to do, and the match played out perfectly again. 70% possession for Arsenal. They looked like doing nothing with it. Spurs scored on a break twice. This is just another one of those games where I feel like I know exactly what Spurs are going to want to do. It's just whether they'll be able to do it again with the same perfect execution that they've already done twice this season against two other top opponents.
What would you predict now, really quickly, in terms of the goal scoring? Would you see a high scoring game or quite a tight affair?
No, I don't think it'd be high scoring. I think, but I think it's a tough one, What are you gonna? We'll do verdicts now. What are you gonna go for, verdict wise?
I'm gonna actually go for a. Weirdly, I think Liverpool are gonna win, and I'd say weirdly they are the better side. Like that, So I shouldn't really say weirdly before that, but obviously we've just spent the last 10 minutes kind of talking about the threat. But I'm gonna go Liverpool 2-1 after Tottenham taking the lead.
I will be amazed if that happens, if Spurs take the lead.
And Mourinho can't see it out. I see why, but if things just seem to happen when Liverpool are at home, like different things to where they would normally. So maybe I'm just I'm talking of many scars of years gone by, expecting that to happen, Josh. But it'll be. I think it's going to be a tight game anyway. I don't think it'll be 4-0 either way.
No, I'm gonna go 1-1, I think. But I'll be honest, I am very fearful that Liverpool's Anfield run could end here. And it wouldn't be I wouldn't be surprised if I come out of it, if it did happen, saying next week, Liverpool played great, and Klopp comes out saying Liverpool played great, 70% possession, and Spurs just stole it because they seem to keep stealing it. And it gets to a point where it's no longer a coincidence. It's just them being really good at doing that. But a few days later, we'll then be facing, I suppose, a very similar but more miniature version of Spurs in Crystal Palace. I think the tactical dynamic for that game is going to be quite similar, to be honest.
Yeah, good players. Is Zaha going to be fit for this game?
I think so, yeah. He played, is he got an injury, has he?
I thought he might have. Maybe I'm getting mixed up when I was catching up on the weekend. I wasn't sure if he'd come off. I could be miles off. But yeah, they've got some really good players, and who can hit you in. Oh no, I'm getting mixed up a couple of weeks ago now. Yeah, they've got some really good players who can hit you in transitions. Yeah, it weirdly is going to be a similar game, and it's hard to predict though at this stage before that Tottenham game.
Yeah, I think the Tottenham game is going to be, you could argue, perfect practice, really. And I think if we stop Spurs, if we don't concede the counter to them, technically we shouldn't concede a counter to Palace. But you can never predict these things too accurately because it's these counter attacks they're just moments, aren't they? And it feels like anything can happen almost when they materialise.
Yeah, I agree. But they have some good players. It'd be interesting to see how they cope with like Eze and stuff. And I was just having a quick look at him now. I can't believe he's only scored one goal because every time I watch Palace, he looks such a threat.
Yeah, no, he has been. I think Eze and Zaha are two problems, and I think they both play towards the left of the pitch, so which will be Trent, maybe Henderson, hopefully Matip if he plays, dealing with those. And I think if you stop that ball progression, Palace generally will struggle to get up the pitch, I think. But it's something that very few teams manage to stop because of how good those players are at just finding solutions when they're crowded out and things like that.
Yeah. It's the only thing is, sometimes it's never an easy game, Palace, but I do wonder sometimes whether Hodgson maybe doesn't. And this might sound like such a dinosaur comment, but I don't know if there's always that same level of ambition to win these games a little bit for him.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned in the past. I think he gives teams like us too much respect sometimes. I think to the extent where he sacrifices too much of his attack, and I think he goes a bit too deep with his defensive line to the extent that Zaha literally has to travel about 80 yards to get a shot away, which is just too much. I think there's been meetings in the past with the likes of Manchester City, and I think they've won the whole match without having a shot and stuff like that. That's not a joke, I'm telling you. And that just shouldn't be happening, should it?
No. Especially, I say it does have a little bit of a fresher feel this season because I thought they recruited quite well. As I said, like Eze, for example, didn't feel like a Palace signing at all. And he was a good piece of business, and he's definitely brought something to the team. So certainly we talked about the way that they might set up and approach the game. I think they could on paper cause Liverpool issues.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. I think the next two games that Liverpool have got, it's going to be a real test of can you break down a disciplined defence while stopping counter-attacks yourself without Van Dijk or Gomez. It's going to be a major test of that for the next week, really. And if the answer to that is yes, Liverpool are probably going to come out with 2 wins because I can't see Spurs or Palace scoring outside of a counter-attack, really. Apart from, maybe a set piece or something like that. But I think in terms of Palace's numbers, as a result of being the type of team that they are, again, they're not the strongest, really. The 15th in the league for non-penalty expected goals, 14th for shots, and on the defensive side, a little bit better, 9th for XG against, and 15th for shots against. Obviously, that gap between the shots and the XG against there is because obviously the shots that they face don't tend to be that clear cut. Hence the deep block that they tend to employ. So I feel like it's one of them opponents, to be honest, Dave. I feel like there's not a lot to add on them. I think the casual fan will know what to expect from Crystal Palace, and I think we've previewed these, last season before, or whatever, for however long this podcast has been going. Hodgson's been in charge the whole time. The dynamic of the team has been vaguely similar the whole time. The only difference this time, I suppose, is that in addition to Zaha, they've added Eze, who's equally capable of carrying his team up the field. But other than that, I don't think there's much to add, really.
No, I'd find it peculiar if I was a Crystal Palace fan, because maybe this goes well on the outside looking in, but I'm not really sure what their long-term ambition is, whether it is just kind of to do what they're doing now and push for kind of top 10 finishes. They seem quite happy to meander along, with, for example, having Hodgson in charge, and it feels like a few years ago they tried drastically, didn't they, to take a new approach and maybe implement a new philosophy and a new culture at the club, with Van der Boer, was it? Who come in there?
Frank de Boer, yeah.
Frank de Boer, yeah, it was, yeah. He come in and it kind of went pear-shaped too quick. They didn't really do the right preparation for them, and it almost felt like that scared them off a little bit for a couple of years, and now they just want to remain quite comfortable. So yeah, it's a strange one, but right now they seem to just be a bit of a steady Eddie club. Will have some nice results over the season, but probably won't really threaten the top end of the table.
Yeah, unless they're facing one at the top end of the table in a match.
Yeah, that's the
problem. So verdict on this one then?
Again, I would like to have commented after the Tottenham game, but say Liverpool win this game on Wednesday 2-1 like I predicted, I'll continue with that, and I'll say I don't know, this could be the game that you come down a little bit if you do secure a big win, where you have to go again, and it's quite difficult mentally, but I'll go.
I should add as well. It's the lunchtime kickoff on a Saturday, which
tough that. Yeah.
And I'm going to go Wednesday night.
I'll go 1-0. 1-0.
Okay. It's tough, Since I've just realised it's the lunchtime kickoff after playing Spurs Wednesday night in what is obviously going to be an intense game, I'm now questioning myself. I was going to say 2-1, but now, just because it's away from home, early kickoff, counter-attacking team, I'm thinking 1-0 now. I'm going to go with 2-1, but I don't really think it's going to be much of an endurable week. I think Spurs and Palace are two tricky opponents that you just don't really want to face unless you've got everyone fit and firing. So if we come out of this with 6 points, take the points and run, really. But yeah, unless you've got anything to add, Dave, thanks for joining us.
No, yeah, I enjoyed that. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And everyone have a good Christmas, and we will be back between Boxing Day and New Year for the Christmas special, I suppose. So yeah, thanks for listening, and see you next week.